For those of you sitting in wherever you are, thank you for joining. I know either you're finishing exams, you're starting exams, or you're getting students contacting you about helping them with their classes. And I know one more thing that you don't want to add to your plate is having to keep track of how they're doing with the class. But we know in the world of higher education, it's about performance measures. And as business faculty, we know in the business world, it's all about outcome performance. The Connect features that are given for assignments are wonderful for creating assignments, especially when you're looking at AACSB. Coming from a community college, I have always been aware of my transferability of my coursework for my students who will be going to schools of business. And I use textbooks on purpose for my courses that are AACSB because I do believe it's my responsibility to make sure they're prepared for what's coming. And everybody can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I teach multiple classes in the business domain, business communication, business math, and the introduction to business, I'm using Nichols, McHugh, and McHugh, Understanding Business. I've been, as you can see, using the 10th and 11th edition. I've been using Understanding Business since the 7th edition. So I have multiple sections of coursework, and I definitely get reports across my classes to see how these students are doing exam to exam, assignment to assignment. If I put in a review for one class, I put it in for another, see how they're doing, because it gives me the feedback of knowing, do they understand the 3 forms of business ownership? Do they understand the 4 P's of marketing? Or if I'm in my business math class, do they have an understanding of how to calculate fire insurance? Because sometimes these students, regardless of where they go, still need the basics of business. And I tend to stay with additions. So in looking at the 10th edition of my spring 2015 class, I had some exams online, and those were the ones I was looking to see how students were doing, especially the first to the third exam. Second one was proctored in class. But for the first to the third, the content changes. But the compound learning of understanding the principles didn't. So I wanted to see if I had any transferability. It's a nice read-through on assignments to be able to go to your section performance and see how they're performing. So for 22 assignments, we're looking at about almost 100%. Well, that's great. Most of these are Learn Smart assignments. But what I'd like to see is how did exam 1 go, because it's the first one they'll ever do. The statistics allow me to understand how each student might have done, but if I really want to find out how they did as a class, I might go to the item analysis. Let's share, edit, okay. Let's see, assignment results. What I'll do is I'll look for within, you can see their grades, but that doesn't just tell me how one person does. If I'd like to see item by item, how did they do on this exam, I'm going to click the report to say, okay, they only got 1 attempt, so their best attempt is going to be their best. What I'm looking for is the questions they didn't get because, okay, evidently they understood the marketing era. But if I wanted to understand, and I can always export this too, so when I have to send it to my dean or I have to show overall performance in my classes, I can export it to an Excel spreadsheet and share it with my colleagues across different campuses. In the community college, we have 6 different campuses and 25 business faculty. All of us decided to use this same book, Bus 100's Understanding Business by Nichols, McHugh, and McHugh. So we're comparing student populations across the college. And we're finding some interesting dynamics that our English language learners tend to do better on the first exam than the 4th exam. Well, the 4th exam tends to be more marketing-based and nuanced language. We can understand why. So we are working within that understanding to help ads and taglines make more sense to a population that doesn't understand where it came from. But you can see that everybody got these right. But when I start getting into contacting customers after a sale, what does it mean? I might bring this one up in class and that's why, only 44% of you got it. Where are we getting lost? Because it became a terminology, what is cognitive dissonance? But this allows me to see across the dynamic what is going on. I can also print this as well. And then if I were to take it out of that and look at the categories, I would still want to look at the same exam. And the category I'm going to use is, where did we sit on the AACSB? Or where does the Bloom's taxonomy look at it? Because when I start tracking student learning outcomes, is it an actual pedagogical reason or is it because of AACSB? And towards exams 3 and 4, when I start bringing in more specific content, exam 3 specifically for me is HR management, exam 4 gets into marketing dynamics. Those become more Bloom's taxonomy. Can they make the transferability and information? And what was the level of learning I pulled on this exam? Was it more easy? Did it get more critical thinking based? Did I go more essays? Or what were the topic areas? This one specifically, I was looking at AACSB, and I wanted to find out, okay, there were 16 questions on ethics. How did they do? Well, they got most of them right. I had an average of 80%. But I might still ask, okay, where did we get lost in an ethical dilemma? When do you feel it's a dilemma? This particular class thought anything in ethics was a dilemma, so they just were confused by the question. But compliance-based and integrity-based, that became a student learning outcome. We as a discipline decided across the college we wanted to put out there for one semester. Student will be able to state the differences between compliance-based ethics systems and integrity-based ethics systems as it identified in the different forms of business ownership. So we were trying to cross what we were asking them to do and apply their knowledge, because the KSAs are which we get valued in business, but when it comes to what is a compliance-based ethics, you get down to what's the difference between rules and regulations and policies and procedures. And I'm getting in the weeds a little bit, but this is how our clusters, we called it, used it, because it was understanding where ethics was not coming about. And we were all using this same report to say, well, what did your students do on these questions? We didn't get the same tests, we were in the same content areas. And then reflective thinking, what was the free market economy, Adam Smith, how did this all play out? And it gave us the opportunity to really have some hard discussions on where do students get lost and why, and if we're going to send them into a four-year school environment from a community college, do they understand the basics, the fundamentals, to be at least aware and converse in the dynamic? Any questions so far? No? Okay. And that was just, and I did that across sections because I was looking at changing my exam semester to semester. And let's see, where's the current one? Go back to my courses. And another thing we had been able to do was to look at the difference in additions. Did our testing change significantly? And it didn't. We didn't think it would. But performance across, how's the section doing in comparison to how it was doing this time last year with a different addition, allowed us to look at, okay, we're on mark. Students are sitting where they should. I always get nervous with these students because if I want to dive deeper, who are these students? And they'll have names associated with them. I click them, and I can see what's going on. Oh, he spent over 4 hours on his assignments. We need to talk to him. This student wasn't doing anything, and I had to withdraw him from the class. This one's sitting on a bubble. I want to find out what's going on. I want to see her assignments and where they're sitting. Okay, where is she getting stuck if, we're getting highs and lows like this? This allows me to go student for student. I usually send a text, an email that indicates, the student might want to see me after class or make an appointment, because my at-risk report is going to indicate she's right on that bubble. She was sitting somewhere between at-risk and she was dealing with a whole dynamic there. And I can send the messages right straight from Connect. I noticed you're struggling in this content area. Would you like to stop by my office? Can I talk to you after class? Because the idea is that I want to catch these students before they go this way and they come back. And this allows me to really show progress semester to semester, test to test, not just to students. When I bring them in my office and show them, they've moved from an at-risk situation to one that's in what I would consider a safe position, but still encouraging them to apply, because that allows the student to really see progress. And on a one-on-one with a professor, it can make a difference, especially if they're trying to understand why their assignments since STEM aren't doing well. This semester, because I'm pushing the dynamic and our cluster had asked that we consider it, we're putting more writing elements into our coursework. So in this, let's see, where's this site? Here we go. My particular spring assignment, they have to do case studies, but their video cases go into my learning management system, which is in Blackboard. And those students actually had to watch the video case and actually answer the questions, but it had to be more than just answering questions, because we're trying to get our business students to start doing some pre-work in writing. So just don't answer the questions even if they're less 1 to 4. Make them more essay and approach in terms of answering and start connecting the answers. So we get a 5-paragraph essay, but a 5-paragraph essay that touches on the answers as well as connects to the chapter material, so they can try to create some continuity between content. Because when they get to the 4-year schools, a principles of finance class is just finance for that semester, but it came from a baseline understanding of principles of business and accounting and maybe some marketing and maybe some management and how people react when dealing with finance. So these were what our community college discipline looks at, is being able to show progress and know if we have challenges before a student gets too wrapped up in not being able to recover. And that's where we push ourselves, because I've been using other assignments and my ebook, as well as being able to use unstructured resources to create a review real quick, off the cuff, right before a test, because the students are still confused maybe between the organizational theory, or they're confusing their management theorists and their impressions of employees versus employers. And that one did help in that one particular semester. I created an online review, and I got to see where students were getting stuck, so I could lecture to that dynamic before they took the test, and I was able to bypass the problem. But the nice thing about any of these reports is you can see it per assignment, per student, or the statistics overall. The category analysis and the at-risk reports have helped me identify students on the beginning of the semester, so I can see them move out of the red into the yellow and more towards green by the end of the semester. Business math especially, because it's just a math class, those students say, but then they realize that calculating insurance premiums and workman's compensation and having to deal with payroll isn't as easy as it sounds. And when you're actually taking them through those processes, it's a way of thinking. Anybody who's taught accounting can probably verify that it's not just the math, it's the process of thinking what's happening. And I found that in my business math class quite a bit. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Nope, okay. I just want to make sure I'm not boring anybody. You know, I know at the end of the semester I don't want to put anybody to sleep. You know, that's what I do with my students, not my colleagues. The item analysis, that was the report. Categories, here we go. The learning objectives per exams always are interesting to see how they got stuck and whether or not your medium questions actually helped or hurt them. And that became more of the critical thinking. 44 out of 50 is a lot lower than the 39 out of 40 I had earlier. So I found that in the 3 questions, sometimes, in particular the marketing chapters, not understanding the difference between a push and a pull strategy. Why does a marketer do this? Most of the students come into the class with an understanding of how it is to be a consumer. Part of the shift I had to work on was making them think like marketers and get out of the, you're on this side of the counter, you're not on that side of the counter. You're asking the customer what they want, you're trying to get them to buy more. So we did a couple exercises in class to help flesh that out, not misunderstanding. Yeah, this class I'm working a lot more. And, you know, this is widening. Why is this widening? Well, let's see, I have 50 students, but more in the red. I've got an equal disbursement here, and I have contacted all these students. And these students in the previous semester, I found out some of them were the first time in college. They didn't know what it meant. So I had to do one class of what does college mean? And I was able to bring some of these students by risk factor and bring them back into the safe zone when they understood what the application was of what they were doing. Because I don't know about my colleague in North Carolina, but community college students tend to think of college, community college sometimes in the 13th grade. Well, this works in high school, this will work here. Not necessarily, and that's probably one of the first culture shocks I get to deliver, is the fact that it's not the same thing. High-performing students are going to stay high-performing students, but the at-risk, this one, after this past spring, looking at this dynamic, was concerning to me, and I asked across the college if any of my other colleagues were having this challenge, and we were seeing it across the college. So we had a large number of students who found out first time in college, first in their family to go to college. We needed another subsequent orientation to understand what college was about, and then subsequently in other business classes, we saw improvement. So we were able to help students because we had the benefit of a program that helped us identify, at least at a class level, what they were experiencing. And the nice thing about Insight was able to find them. Are they moving? Are they developing? Are they keeping what they need to? Because my lowest scoring students by the first test, I do my best to reach out to each one of them to make sure, A, do you know how to study? B, do you know what it means to study? And what are you doing to study? Because most of my students consider studying sitting in front of a TV, texting their friends, and listening to music at the same time. That's distracted learning. And students need to understand that, when you get to college, it has to kind of kick in. but I can always dive deeper, and I love this ability because I can say, okay, if I had to make a bell curve, this would work, but we really don't want anybody sitting all the way down here. And if I've got too many people coalescing in here, I've got to bring them up just a bit. And I can do this across my courses, across my disciplines. I can see one student who might take 2 of my classes and see how they're doing in each subject area, the same student. So I can see if they're an at-risk in one class or they're at-risk in the other. And is that a dynamic of the course material or is that a dynamic of life in general? Because our students tend to get a lot of life interrupted that takes, puts academics to the back seat. So sometimes it takes a little more effort to find those students, but you do what you can. Because I find that time spent, just because it's a number of hours, doesn't mean the grades are going up. 14 hours spent on assignments, averaging 68% says, I think the student could use some study help. Maybe it's the content and they don't know how to study for it. It's not as simple as a math or a science class, right or wrong. Anybody have any questions on specific reports?
Nope.
Oh.
Good.
Anybody want to see any specific outline of a report? I'm just trying to see what it is you're trying to measure. What are you trying to measure for, you attended the webinar because somebody told you had to measure something. What are you measuring?
Well, I'm kind of new to the Connect program, so I'm just kind of observing to see what it does. And we are AACSB accredited, so ultimately I may have to look at some of the AACSB measures. But, all of the stuff that you've been outlining I think is really, really helpful just to know how this works and what it does. That's really why I'm here to watch.
And the nice thing is that how it works is you'll be able to export it to an Excel spreadsheet and show your deans progress among the students, grade to grade, or averaging out. And Connect really does help print those reports, so you're not trying to figure out how to do it yourself, because this connects to my Blackboard. So all my students have a one-time log on. They log in through Blackboard and they access all their Connect material through Blackboard. So I got them toggling back and forth between systems. They might do the discussion board on Blackboard, but the grade book is also bringing in their Connect grade, and I can show their whole grade book from Blackboard.
We have Moodle, so I'm thinking it probably connects right to Moodle as well.
Oh, and it's a great integration too. It goes right to the back end of your grade book. You don't have to worry what happened, or go back and re-enter.
So I have one question.
It's a really good system. Sure.
I have one question for you. You talked about that the fact that you did an essay assignment with them.
Uh-huh.
Are there any auto grading procedures that go on with Connect, or is it just kind of a place to store their papers? And does it do any checking for like turn it in or anything like that?
I know that there's a Connect function for grading of essays, and it sets up a pretty strict rubric, and it's under your assignment function when you set up a actual assignment. How is it structured? What is it used for?
Okay.
So if I wanted to put an essay into one of my business classes, I guess they're library assignments. If I wanted to enter one, is it a Learn Smart assignment? Is it a Connect assignment? I can show I can take a file and make my own assignments, but it does have the ability to grade essays. I did them for video cases as we were using video cases across the college, so we were all copying from each other's Blackboards. It's like I'm sitting here.
Kathy, if you go under Add Assignment, under the home screen, and click on Add Assignment,
yep,
and then scroll all the way down, there's the writing assignment, the blog assignment, the file attachment assignment, yep.
Oh, great.
There we go.
All kinds.
And it can attach a document. A student can attach a document, or you want it online, how you want your student to submit it. Do you want it to become, do you want to let them have text editing rights? Do you give them so many drafts? And this allows you to add images and tell them what you're expecting. So this is where you load your rubric. So it makes it easier for you to be able to go one place so you're not chasing down emails they're sending you. Because I found the first thing I had to do was keep it on one platform, because if I didn't, I lost track. And it was also nice to give students group assignments, because if I gave them a group assignment, then I could see if they were talking to each other within the assignment because it kept them in one place. So there was no, we never got to meet. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do that. Oh, yes, you could. You can go online. Yeah, they all live on their smartphones. So, I don't know, as a section in this class, I was watching grade fall over time because I was seeing that students, you know, right here, this part, how to form a business. Okay, if students don't have the basic element of understanding the 3 forms of business ownership, I have a bigger problem. That's not sending a good student prepared to a 4-year school and a school of business if they can't tell me the difference between a sole proprietorship and a partnership. That's a problem. So this is when I kind of raised the flag of concern, and I was chasing these students down to say, okay, what's going on? And when I clicked into it, I found out students weren't doing the assignment. They'd just forgotten. I'm like, whew, okay, it's your fault, not mine. That was pretty much the way I looked at it. I'm like, okay, that's on you. Ooh, I got a little scared there because I thought I really missed the mark. Yeah. And, you know, manually graded assignment your students can respond to. They can attach their own documents. The discussion board assignments work if students are talking online to each other. That works. The writing assignments, like I said, I keep them typically on Blackboard because we're using them across the college, and we're comparing student composition and using our English faculty to help us reinforce the 5-paragraph essay, conclusion, state your point, state your point, state your point. Now I'm giving you something that matters. You know, where's the thesis? So we're trying to really strengthen business writing at our levels right now. But the writing assignments, you can do peer reviews, you can do multiple drafts, you can say, okay, get it peer reviewed, then send it to me, and that works through this.
And there's no way to put it through a plagiarism check.
I don't know if it goes through a plagiarism check because I require citations. So my students have to have at least 3 citations. I've already nailed 3 students for trying to use Wikipedia. They get an automatic 0 if they use Wikipedia. Because I made the comment Wikipedia is a place to start, not a place to sort, not a place to cite. You know, peer reviewed, you go through the whole idea what's a peer reviewed journal. You know, they didn't have to do that in high school. Now they have to realize there are other people saying things that are verifiable, not just because they thought it up. But that was, and you can also, the nice thing with Connect, if you're new to it, is you can share a lot of your assignments, colleague to colleague. You can take your own course and copy your own course, and somebody else can then make it theirs, so they can use a template approach from maybe they liked your quizzes, or they liked your writing assignment. Or you can just send the writing assignment to your colleagues to put into their Connect. It's really, really, it's collegial almost in its own approach. Any other questions?
Now is the time where we've come to our Q&A portion of the webinar. If there are any questions for Kathy, please unmute yourself and ask your question, or use the chat box feature within WebEx to ask your question. Kathy, if there are no questions at this time, I have a question for you, if I may ask. Could you kind of speak to how students may use these reports on their end as well too, where they can view their progress within SmartBook to view their own status of learning, or how do you show them these reports or their specific results and making it relevant to them from Introduction to Business or the business math classes that you teach?
When students are asking how they're doing, I'm asking them to, from the standpoint of how, you know, you look at your own student profile, because in their performance area, they can see assignment to assignment, because I can show them in class how they're doing as a class. I'm not going to get down to individual students, but if I've got them in my office, for instance, I'll walk them through how to look up what they're doing so they can see their own performance. Now, what I can see right here, and they can see it too, is how they're doing chapter to chapter. And basically maybe how long they're taking on each assignment. And if you're going to take 18 minutes on an assignment, I hope you don't expect an excellent grade. But if I see you're taking almost an hour, then you're telling me you're stuck. You're stuck on promissory notes. You're stuck on compound interest. It's throwing you. This was a business math class. And it was throwing her because by the time she got to the exam, we had already had 2 review sessions so she could better understand it, because she wasn't able to do the assignments because she didn't understand the concept but it did create a conversation. And these students can see how long they're taking on things. You know, understanding mutual funds, not an easy subject. We spent 2 classes on that. So her hour before it was due, and the students in my classes have to do the online assignment. They have to do the quiz, I guess you could say, the Learn Smart activity, before I lecture, because I'm dragging them through the content. I want them to have read it, get an idea of what it is, attempted to take a quiz on it, so when they walk into my class, it's not new. It's understood confusion. I know where I'm stuck, or I get it this far. This doesn't make sense. Then I get more detailed questions in the class. But if I've got a student sitting in front of me, I will walk them through what they've submitted, and maybe any assignments that were in progress that they had tried to review, but she didn't do it. Why didn't she do it? Well, I brought it to class, and we did it as a class because I had seen a lot of students doing it. They were attempting it, but they weren't completing. And let's see. Yeah, and I moved this particular student. She had been here at the beginning of the semester. This was towards the end. She was down here by the end of the semester. So I knew she was getting content information she needed as time went on, because students can see how they're doing, and they can also say, and oh, well, my, chapter 8 didn't post. It's in Learn Smart, but it's not in Blackboard. Oh, I can go check that too. And the students are very good about telling you when their grades aren't posting, especially in your learning management system. That usually means you as a faculty member need to think it more frequently, or they just took it before, it was due and they barely got in under the wire and it hasn't done its basic routine to think. Students tend to think if they can't get into their learning management system, they can't get into Connect. In my class, they know they can go both ways. They can get into Connect, but just make sure it connects back to your Blackboard or your gradebook doesn't follow. And then I'm asking you to produce evidence you took the quiz, because I'm not going to go chase it, because at that point it's stuck at McGraw-Hill on a different server. And I've had to work with their tech support, which, by the way, you get stuck anywhere in Connect. These webinars are helpful. There are other faculty out there that do YouTube videos on how to do all this, but the tech support staff is above par. Those folks work very hard to get back to any faculty, and they know when we're in crunch time. They know it's exams. They know it's midterms. They know it's the beginning of the semester. Student code didn't work, or the code worked and it was already used. They will do everything they can to make sure you are responded to, taken care of, and adjusted accordingly so you can continue to operate. And I've had students tell me they really appreciate the tech support from McGraw-Hill too. It's better than any other publisher they've worked with. And students are very aware of the other content areas. They know Stengage's product. They know McGraw-Hill's products. They know, because as faculty, we're all starting to ask for that added plug-in. Their learning management system isn't just a push anymore, it's a portal. That portal to accessing real robust information from a publisher is what's going to make or break their college. These are millennials. They're online all the time. Let's give them something that makes them engaged. But I've had students tell me right and left, McGraw-Hill is the best tech support. So your students will get their help. Your publisher's rep, so they can do a first day of class presentation. Then you get to tell your students, I'm not tech support, McGraw-Hill is. Here's your representative from McGraw-Hill. Tech support, this is how you reach them. Your rep can also give you a PowerPoint presentation you can put on your learning management system that shows them how to get Connect going. So you're not repeating yourself 17 times by the middle of the semester because it's still not going. Usually I require one assignment be done by a certain date, so I know they're not only in their learning management system, they're also on Connect, and they've logged in. And after 2 weeks, the beautiful thing about this, Connect will also tell you when they're getting ready to expire, meaning they're outside their free trial. And then all of a sudden you realize it's a test and they can't do their quizzes. Well, that's because they haven't bought the material yet. They're outside the free trial. And that's another reminder to students, hey, you got to pay attention. But student reports, they can get and see how they're doing. They don't get to see that they're at risk. They know they're at risk by the time they're contacting me. But from a student performance standpoint, they can see how they fit within the dynamic of their coursework. Did that answer your question, Michael?
Yes, thank you, Kathy, that does. We have another question coming through the chat function from Kathleen Vogue. She had asked, while she understands different AACSB review teams conduct their site visits differently, she's wondering if anybody, including yourself, Kathy, and anybody else on this call, has any experiences to share about how AACSB has accepted, reviewed, and or commented on Connect data used within assurance of learning reports.
I myself have not had to report to AACSB. I have to report to STACS, and I just have to show progress from a community college standpoint. from AACSB standards, George Mason University, the institution we typically transfer to, is appreciative of the fact that we use an AACSB format because their reports are easier to manage because they know that the students are coming from that environment. So I don't know how they're reporting, how they're accepted, but we don't, as a community college, I don't have to deal with the AACSB credentialing process. Anybody else?
I think that may be a no. Thank you for answering that question, Kathy. Are there any other questions for Kathy at this time? Or anything that you would like to see more specifically or a deeper dive into Connect around the features or the functionality at this time? Well, with that science being golden, I think we will wrap up today's presentation. Again, thank you all for taking the time out of your schedule to join us for the session. Should you have additional questions or think of something that you wanted to ask but just didn't ask later on in the day or the week, please feel free to send me an email. Again, thank you all for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day and weeks. Bye, everybody.